All right, we are live. And there's my super fan, Linda.
Linda, Linda,
Linda,
Linda.
Linda. Hey, Linda.
Okay.
Baby girl's doing better, Linda. She's doing much better.
Oh boy.
Back to her old self.
That's good.
Now we got to work on each other here now.
Now, if I get Hopalong Cassidy here, settle down and get him straightened out, we'd be okay.
Yeah, he got to send me that hat. That's a cool hat.
I've been thinking about trying to get. I can get you one, but I just got to go to the right place to get it.
What do you call those hats?
Apple.
That's Apple hat. Yeah,
They got a big apple and a little apple.
He used to have a camel hair apple.
I had a camel hair top coat and apple hat when I met her with a bottle of moon liquor in my coat, in my inside,
a bottle of scotch
inside my coat pocket. I carried that for style.
Anyway, hey you guys, hello Sandra. We enjoyed your company yesterday, and there's Tanya. Hello Tanya. Tanya's in Texas.
She's
in
Texas.
Oh, she got pretty girl there.
She is pretty.
You know something. Look.
And then there's Tanita.
Tanita J. Hickbar.
Mm-hmm.
Norman Hickbar and Tanita Hickbar.
Yeah, Linda baby girls took us round and round and round the mulberry bush this time.
Oh yes. Yes.
For those of you who may have looked for us on Tuesday and saw our little quick announcement, we were just stressed out at that point. Baby girl had dental cleaning on Tuesday morning at 8. When she got there, she was really nervous. Well, she stressed.
Oh, she was shaking. So, man, I feel.
And she doesn't normally do that when she goes to bed. So she must have felt something. And they did the cleaning. Everything went well. But then right after, she got this real bad, severe diarrhea.
The doctor told us that when they gave her the anesthesia, it was just flowing out of her.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor said. I think it scared the doctor because she thought maybe we're going to put up a lawsuit on her.
She never encountered it, I don't think. Not that bad. So anyway, baby girl was at the point of having to put a diaper on. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
And we had to change it 2 or 3 times after we got her home. And when we did that little announcement, we were thinking we were going to have to rush her to the ER. And the vet had already called the ER to prepare them for us. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And baby girl already has colitis. And every now and then, if she gets the wrong food or anything like that, she'll have a flare-up of diarrhea. But this was very severe. And they had given her fluids all day long. So she was there from 8 in the morning till 5:30 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And which was closing time for them. And so they were really distraught as well as we were. And so we decided if it's colitis, stress colitis,
that's what that is.
If it's that, we didn't want to take her to ER and then keep her overnight. She's going to be even more stressed.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. So we decided to keep her here and just monitor her.
And it was the best decision we could ever make.
And if it didn't get better, to take her, but we weathered it out. We weathered it. It was something.
Let me tell you something, you guys out there. I can't look at YouTube with any type of animal that's been mistreated, and the thoughts of, well, you do that by animals, people. I have a problem looking at. Pain. Even though it's Hollywood, any kind of suffering for anybody, pain.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
My motor scooter up there, it don't scoot. It don't scoot. I can't take it. I just can't take it.
Yeah.
I don't know what 76, 75 age has got something to do with it. I kind of think it does, but if you're going to make it through this, I'm going to talk today some more about the 2 sides of the cross.
Well, let's go ahead and do it.
Okay. You ready? Got something you want to read?
No, go ahead. I'll jump in. Go ahead. If you're ready, go right ahead.
One of the things that I want to tell you guys that if you go spirit thinking, seeing, and there's a part of you that's automatically doing it in grace. But there's another side of your function in this world that can have the same operation through what we used to teach in the four walls: practice, principle, and technique. Now, practice, principle, and technique operates like Jesus was at the fig tree, and he said, "You can have what you say," and that's the part of the walk of the walk, the walkless walk. There's a walk of the spirit, and then there's a walkless walk.
Which is
The walkless walk is that you don't walk expecting your foot to set in a certain place, like what they call that,
sure-footed.
no, it's a where you can't pay attention to every step you make going up the steps.
Mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness means you are noticing, taking your time and noticing every step. That's work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a part of us that orders, metaphorically speaking, we go to the airport or we call or get on the computer and order a plane ticket to California. We VIA, that's what VIA means. We, along with them, assist them by doing something
And
on one end to get them to do something on their end. But let's just say you didn't call them to purchase a ticket, and all of a sudden you find out that you can fly to California without doing anything. That would be called the no doing grace side. Now, there's in the Bible that talks about the grace of labor and the labor of grace, the grace of work and the work of grace, or the work of doing. When a farmer goes out in the field, the non-doing self is the energy life of God in the dirt and the elements that you're standing on. The farmer goes out there, he does VIA, what is necessary to get that ground from what he thinks to be prepared to grow anything, not anything but what he sowed. I have seen a time when I went out in the garden and when I was little, and I helped my aunt and uncle, they didn't pull the weeds out. That's that's them doing something. That's the doing self.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen a time when they went out there, and I went out there and I did it, just testing, just throw the seed out there, let it go for itself, let it rip off. That's the no doing self. It's like, again, metaphorically, an acorn fall off of a tree, or oak tree. Now that acorn, inside of that acorn is a master geographical computerized image inside of that acorn that is the same power, wittiness of growth that's on a tree that it fell off of. It doesn't do anything but lay on the ground and wait for whatever the earth says will cover up or make it go down in the ground. If it does not, watch this, if it does not go in the ground and die, it will abide alone.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here we come to us. Trials, aggravation, and frustration, like what we're dealing with, is another way the earth is saying, if you're whole, there you go. He done popped. He done popped already.
I know, but finish your sentence.
Okay.
It's another way the earth is saying.
Yeah, the earth will, if the earth does not recognize that acorn by its own empathicness, that acorn will lay on top and die. If it die either way, it's going into the earth, either here or somewhere else.
It'll serve another purpose.
It'll serve another purpose, but it will not have to do but one thing, but sit there on its can, on its bottom lower dimensional, everything doing self, but it seems like
But it's
in
a,
the dark side.
but it's still a non-doing.
Right.
Yes.
Now, here we go again. When somebody is going through something with the sleeping church, the sleeping side of salvation says in the miraculous, the sleeping side says grace of doing nothing. But no, I'm wrong. I correct it. The sleeping side in the church is this side that says, whenever anything comes up that does not go according to what I believe God for or want from the Spirit, I can pray and fast and seek God and go to sleep deeper and have that thing to manifest from the side of the ego. The ego is the one that's always trying to work to get it to happen. And listen, it works because there's a law. I saw this happen in two preachers in a church. One was just doing the music, and that was it. No shouting, no jumping. But there was another in the audience that was ministering to people and telling them by the gifts of the Spirit the word of prophecy, what's going to take place. He was doing something.
So you saw actually two modes.
I saw two modes
of getting the same thing done.
Getting the same thing done from a different angle.
One putting forth a whole lot of effort, the other coming from the place of rest.
Now we have not talked, and I just talked about that this past Sunday.
See. You know, I'm gonna have to pick up on you.
And that's why I was popping, because that, a matter of fact, I could talk about the experience that actually happened. Because of the nature of the message on Sunday afternoon, I did not live stream it. It deal with I talked a lot about, and Dad hit on it, the difference between rest and unrest. And I was explaining what was actually happening in the universe, not just in the earth, but in the universe. And so I shared concerning what has happened with the new culture of how we are operating now within ministry, where we don't have all of the things that we had before, with all of the music and the singing. Matter of fact, we literally don't have a choir nor a praise team. We do a very quick devotion and we go straight into the word. But the results has been the same way that I would normally flow when there was music and the praise team and everything. It's the same way I'm flowing without it. And so when Dad said that, that's why I said I was about to burst. And then I actually had, because of the nature of the message, and I may touch on some of it today. Because of the nature of the message, so many people stayed afterwards, because we had a real good crowd this past Sunday, and they were saying, I enjoyed this much more than what we used to do.
Wow, now that's good.
They said that a lot of the things that we were using back then actually was a distraction to them.
Okay.
And so I am seeing now that in the process of this shift, in the process of this change, we're now being able to identify those that are, I would say this way, spiritually mature. They don't need all of the superficial stuff to get going and so forth. They know who they are, and they just want to hear.
And I know the word maturity popped in your mind, but I know that those people are serious seekers.
Exactly.
Serious
word.
seekers.
I like that.
Yeah, serious seekers.
Yeah.
So they don't want the frills or the bells and whistles. They want the substance.
Now, let me share this with you. You didn't know us during this time. She was awakened one night, and Spirit said he was going to begin to manifest in the physical realm.
We were only married for maybe a year.
Maybe a year. And I was asking Spirit, how could all of a sudden she could hear everything he was saying, and I couldn't.
And this was during the time when you were what I call a serious seeker, because
A seeking time.
we were living with my mom and dad. We were just married, and we stayed upstairs in mom and dad's house. There were 2 bedrooms up there.
Yeah.
One of the bedrooms we took as a little place for our meditation and prayer. The other side we used as our bedroom, and then there was the attic, and you could actually walk into the attic.
On that floor.
There was no insulation there,
No.
but
Hot and cold.
he would go in that attic and sit in, no matter what the temperature was, for hours.
And then I switched it. You switch around.
And later I built him a closet under the stairs.
Down when you come down
Yeah.
and make a turn, like in his house now, like what we got now.
Right. But go ahead, what you were gonna say. So
and so
the Lord woke me up
and told her,
me.
And I said, well, why did he tell me? And but he did tell me. That night or that weekend, I had an opportunity to speak at a prophetic church where we ended up joining. I had no idea we had to all speak. I think that was that one Saturday night just for me, wasn't it?
I can't remember, but I know you ended up ministering.
I spoke,
you ended up ministering,
and I walked down out of the rostrum, the pulpit area, and it was then that Spirit started speaking to me.
And this was in the days of the prayer lines. You remember the prayer lines?
And all I did was stand there and do whatever. Now watch this. Here it is. I did whatever love said in me to do. And I know now that real love of Jesus, the Christ I am, you are, we is, all of us.
And then there was scripture where Jesus said, I do always what my Father. I can't remember.
I do nothing of myself. I do always what the Father.
Okay. Told me. Yeah.
I saw the experience in the Old Testament working through us was the weeping prophet of the Jeremiah office. I didn't know that at the same time, one of the highest dimensional operation that any of us could work into in this life is the office of Jesus Christ. Now, in the office, here we're talking about difference in terminology like the baptism of the Holy Spirit, the office in the area of the 10 Commandments, which is the law of the written letter. And then when you hear people say, is it scripture? Is it scripture? Is it scripture? They represent, here we go. They represent, here it comes now. Watch it. Hold your underwear. Pull your pantyhose up. They represent Judas. Judas represents, and I don't want to say it. I don't want to beat nobody with this. Judas represents the evangelicals that believe that God will bring curses on you and whoop your butt and a judgment, such as what is the country going through. Now, that is a side of the ego that is masterful in making them in the mind area believe that that is exactly the way God is. But now I'm going to turn this thing around. Don't shake your head too fast because you're allowed to lose your marbles. This that I'm seeing in that side is the same side that came through Pilate and the high priest there in the book that said, on those around Jesus, said they spit on him and beat him and said, prophesy to me who did that, which one of us. And then here come Pilate and said, do you not know? Well, first of all, he said, are you the King of Jews? And I could, and standing there inside of the Christ that I was is then now, I could have told him, ask your mama. Well, anyway, So, so,
That's
so, but I didn't ask him that like I wanted to now. I found out that when Jesus turned and said, "You could have no power at all over me, Pharaoh."
mm-hmm.
Go back to Pharaoh and Moses. The same pattern of the law was operating that killed Jesus, and the killing of the spirituality or the somewhat brick and mortar. I'm not trying to point out and make a point out of this. I'm just giving you I'm pointing you towards something that is not seen too much. So the ones that are saying, if you don't do this the way the book said, God will kill you. But there's
Mm-hmm.
a side of God that is in that part. And that's where maturity comes in, when you can find out or let it be revealed to you, even from the teaching that we do or not, by grace of doing nothing. It is though it is the side of us that says every night before we go to bed, if we don't pray, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take.
And all you in all that you're saying, I mean, it sums up in really very simple terms. You're saying moving from a place of rest.
Yes,
And
yes. That's it. That's the formula
yeah,
is not moving
you're still
in an undoing,
moving,
but moving in the place of rest.
still moving, but
There's
from
a
a
rest.
place of rest.
Glory be to God.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, there was a book that we had from by Watchman Nee. It
Mhm.
was called "Sit, Walk, Stand."
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You have that book?
yeah.
But remember, I was exposed to that book through you guys when
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
back in the 80s when y'all was training us out of that book.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
sit, walk, stand was all about the scripture that talks about us being seated with Christ and then walking in the spirit and then stand, and having done all, stand. That was the basis of it. And so we should be moving from a position of sitting,
Okay.
seated, being seated with Christ.
Mhm.
And so what?
They go ahead. I'm just looking at what they say.
Yeah, they're laughing at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tanita's
Okay.
saying, "Oh my God, your mama," at
Yeah.
your mama.
Yeah.
And she's laughing about it. So moving from the seated position, you're still moving, but not from a place of being disturbed, not from a place of being desperate, not from a place of being fearful, not from a place of being feeling like you're obligated, not from that place, but from the place of, I know that this in my knower is the direction I should go in.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
and so and it doesn't always come with a voice or anything like that. It's just an intuitive knowing, Laverne and I were talking about this, and my sister and I talked about this, the baby girl kind of teaching us again. Before we took her down there yesterday or Tuesday for her dental cleaning, I had this feeling, and we talked about it. I said, I don't know if I want to take
And she's
her.
already had stomach problems.
Yeah, I said, I don't know if I want to take her, or should I reschedule it? I should have followed my instinct. And at the same time, I realized that the whole thing was to teach the vet, because they, knowing that she was already stressed, should have aired again,
Yeah.
be cautious about that. So anyway, we were talking about how there are so many times that we get this, what I call an inkling.
Mhm.
Dad calls it a scratchy feeling. You get an inkling or a
Spider
scratchy
sense.
feeling.
But I like that spidey senses.
Yeah, spidey sense that something should be done a certain way or not done, and we have habitually we've been overriding that
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
not realizing that it is actually wisdom floating up from the intuition. But in hindsight, you can look back and say, I knew that.
Mhm.
And so it's moving from the place of rest and trusting the intuition, that the wisdom that arises in the intuition.
Okay.
It's amazing that you said that, Mom, because I'm actually I've been having conversations with several people I don't know if you guys are experiencing it. Well, obviously, you just shared that situation for weeks now, and I would say probably about for maybe 3 weeks. I've been having these weird feelings, these weird knowings. Um, it just you could tell there's either like you said instinct, like something is about to happen. I mean, I could wake up feeling that way and trying to pinpoint it and so forth and so on. And then once I settle down, the wisdom will come through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll start jotting things down. I start researching what I'm actually hearing, only for these things to actually happen.
Okay.
Stuff. And so it's as if there are many in this awakened state, their ability to discern, or they're having this heightened ability of their intuition. I mean, things is just going to a
Mm-hmm.
level where
Mm-hmm.
you're connecting not just with individuals and not just in the realm of supernatural, but you're connecting with the earth and universe itself.
Well, put a pin in that.
Mhm.
Because right now and I know a lot of people don't believe in this in the Christian circles, but the planetary alignments is causing a lot of this stuff to take place,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
we're feeling it and not realizing what we're feeling is actually being influenced by the planetary alignments.
Okay, let's link it together. Let's link it together. Moses is standing before Pharaoh. Pharaoh symbolizes our government. When the Ten Commandments was made by God, that was us in our infinite, eternals, grooving into the stone, the earth self. The same way when Cain killed Abel in the book, if it is true,
Mhm.
Mhm.
the earth spoke and brought about a conversation in this.
Mhm.
And what it spoke was, mm, leave it alone. Noah will take it up. But Enoch came about and said, I'll get out of here before the hour of the cross take place in the earth. I will be gone, but I'll know from the beginning to end how through Enoch. I know how it's going to work out because it's been burned into my. It's not my memory that God is using. The only part of the memory that is
Yeah.
alive here
Yeah.
is for the only part. Watch this. The only part of the memory that's alive here is a forgetting memory. We deliberately chose to forget.
Mhm.
Oh,
We
God.
forgot.
We chose to forget who we were so that when
Yeah,
we come
yeah,
here,
yeah,
we
yeah,
could remember,
yeah.
but not from the standpoint of the ego of who we really
Right.
are.
So what's happening is
Glory
we forgot what we knew and
Oh,
what we
glory.
know, and now are remembering what we already know.
Which means it's actually a supernatural alignment that is
Yeah,
occurring, bringing us back to remembrance. It's
yeah,
funny that Dad mentioned Enoch because again, and we know that certain people, I'll say it that way. I don't want to mention religions, but
Yes,
certain
yes.
people
mhm,
do not embrace a lot of other sacred books. Because you mentioned earlier about scriptures,
Yeah.
and we misunderstand. We think the Bible is scripture. No, scripture is a word that we use that anything that we hold as sacred,
mhm,
sacred writings. And so the,
mhm.
the Bible or the King James Bible that most evangelicals use, it is not truly the total sacred writings. When you mention Enoch,
Mhm.
there is a book, and I think you've read it as well, Dad. The book of Enoch, and
Mhm.
Enoch had actually had discussions with these angelic deities once again
Yeah.
concerning a lot of the things that are actually happening now.
Yeah. Mhm.
Even
Yeah.
even dealing with Christ coming and so forth
Mhm.
and so on. And so it's right on it. We did forget because Enoch himself had the conversation. He was considered to be a liaison between God and all of the supernatural deities with mankind.
Mhm.
That's what
And
he
yeah,
considered.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
Okay, here it is.
Well,
Work while it's day, for when night come, no man can work.
no man can work, right.
mhm,
Go ahead.
So a lot of the things that we interpreted in scriptures, uh, misinterpreted.
exactly.
We misinterpreted. And I've given this example before when it says Jesus is going to return and every eye is going to see him. He's going to appear in a cloud. And I'm thinking, okay, the cloud. We've got the cloud now. That's in technology.
Mhm,
And every eye would see him if he appeared
mhm,
on the internet.
mhm,
So I mean, it's so our way of seeing is totally distorted because we when we look at the scriptures, we have a preconceived idea of what that means. And
mhm.
so like when he says about the man that built his house on a rock. Well, in our case, when we said things are on the rocks in our country, that means it's falling apart.
Exactly.
But when he said he built his house on a rock so it would stand the storm.
Exactly.
So it was a totally different interpretation.
And that's what a lot of the people got to understand. The things that we're reading now from times past, those things was written in a different era. There was a different understanding. There was a different language. Things that they used back then uh, as literal, maybe metaphors for us today, and vice
And
versa.
yeah, and some of it's specific to the Jews.
Exactly. And
Mhm.
so I was at a conference and it was crazy. Because I glad you mentioned about the cloud. I was at a conference years ago, and it was a conference where it was talking about the marriage between uh the message and music. It was about pastors and musicians working
Mhm.
together. They are to marry together and so forth. And so one of the individuals that was on, well, actually several of them that was on the platform, they were sitting at a table, and they were using their iPad.
Mhm.
And so right after they finished, they said, "Is there any questions?" And he said, so one lady raised it. She said, I don't have a question, but I do have a statement. I noticed that y'all using reading the scriptures and stuff out of your iPad, but I would admonish y'all to don't forget about having your
The
Bible,
paper.
the paper book. I could not believe she said that. I was like, now see, this is what I mean about religious conditioning, because what is
Mhm.
the difference between
That and that.
they call it paper book save
Yeah, paper Bible saved.
and stuff? What is the difference between what's written in that and what's written on in the Bible on your
I
tablet?
know, I
And if
know.
you
Well,
really
yeah,
want to be
yeah, and
deep
you're
and
bringing up,
profound, let's go back and get the stones,
yeah,
like Dad was talking
yeah,
about. It's,
yeah.
Mhm.
it's people mindset is just conditioned with these false ideas.
Yes, it is.
It's
Now,
called Bible Call Mama. Mama sent Junior picked up the Bible and went.
well, and not only that, it's remaining in a certain time period.
Mhm,
They decided not to progress from the time period where they were most comfortable, where
mhm,
they received most of their uh everything went the way they wanted it to go in that time era.
mhm.
And then change came. And that's what we call this here, living in atmosphere of change. But then change came and they couldn't go with the change.
Exactly.
And so they're trying to keep everybody in that time period. Now,
Mhm,
Linda asked this question way back, and I didn't forget about it, Linda. I knew we were on a different vein, and Pastor had us going there, and we're going there again. But she says, "What's the difference between a teacher and a preacher?"
I'm laughing because somebody asked me that not too long ago.
Go ahead and answer it. Then, how
Oh,
did you answer?
you
How
want
did you
me
answer?
okay, to be quite simple and straight to the point, there really is no difference actually, because the word, when you study the word preach, it simply means one thing: to proclaim. To proclaim. That's all you're doing, is proclaiming. Teaching, again, I would say we'll go a little different, deeper, where they becoming more detailed, explaining things and so forth and so on. But I know what she's dealing with the religious approach to that, especially in our ethnic group. We
Yes.
consider the difference between preaching and teaching is this: when we're very expressive.
Animated.
uh,
Yes.
I'm gonna say, I gotta say, it's when we're hacking behind our words. The Lord said, everybody could, in our ethnic group, they consider that preaching, but that's not actually preaching. All right. Matter of fact, we have took it so far now where there are actually pastors who have started this training called hoopology, where now you need to and I'm not lying to you guys. That's why I'm sitting back and I'm saying, what in the world is going on?
Yeah.
And so they're teaching people, when you got the hoop, you got to have a hoop behind you, and so forth and so on. That is not preaching.
Right.
Again, Jesus preached, and Mom, you said it several broadcasts back, that Jesus, in this season and time, in the era that we in, he will probably be the most boring preacher out there.
Well, and yes, and go back. You said ethnic group, and I want to explain this to Linda because she may not have even heard this before. But coming from a Black culture, Blacks in this country were not allowed to read. They were not even allowed to learn how to read back in the day, and so books were denied us. We didn't even have a chance to get books. A lot of the preachers, I should say, or ministers from that time period had no education whatsoever, except what the white masters allowed them to know. So blacks at that time were a lot more spiritual than they were intellectual. And so they would go out in the woods, stand on a rock. One of them would stand on a rock and speak what they felt intuitively. But because there were no mics, there was no amplification, they had to scream. And then there are times when they became very, very passionate. You see us sometimes on these live streams, we get so passionate, we start screaming.
Yeah.
And that's how what our envisioning of what a preacher is today, how that came about for our group. But as time went on, and even I remember when I first started, when we first had our conversion experience and started going to church, there were still ministers and who were in the pulpit who could not read, and they had what they called readers. Someone who could read sat down below the pulpit, and they would tell them read, and they would read a scripture, and then he'd preach on it.
Expound from it. Yep.
Exactly. So there's been so many transitions, so many evolutions until we've come to this point where now we know how to say what we want to say without screaming. But the screaming can become addicted, because there is a mode of preaching where a person gets caught up so passionately in what they are saying and what's coming through them, not so much they're thinking, but it's just coming through them that fast till you actually, and I've experienced it, you actually look like you're in another dimension and really lose sight of all the people. You might see them, but you don't see them. You're like you're in a whole new dimension. And the words that come up out of you, you don't know where they're coming from. They're just coming. And so that's another mode. So it's a legitimate preaching anointing.
Okay. Jesus' physical body was raised from the dead by the reflex muscles of God.
Okay.
When a body, for my investigation into funeral home businesses, I deliberately set it up before coming here to interview and to be around people who would deliberately talk about
Yeah, yeah,
the reflex muscles of the bodies.
yeah.
Remember in the Old Testament when the bones of Elijah was put into place, somebody was thrown down on where them bones were,
Yeah.
and they was wrapped up and saturated with the presence of Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
His bones still
Of the
energized.
spirit of Elijah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Now hear this.
Mm-hmm.
The reflex muscles is the muscles that, somebody said, well, if you catch a person, if they're really getting ready to go into rigor mortis, said if you mash they step on their body or mash it, it'll blow gas out the back, the exhaust pipe. It'll pass gas because it's
The reflexes
in the muscles.
My mom, I gotta tell you this. My mom used to work in the hospital, right? And they had a back elevator that they used to transport cadavers or people who had were passed on and were headed to the morgue.
This is real.
And my mom would use that elevator.
Yeah.
And she said she got on there one day and it was somebody on the gurney under a sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said that elevator started moving and it was rocking like this and said the hand flew out. She said the body started to move. And she said when they would put that body in the incinerator, that the body would move.
Yeah.
Those are the reflexes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we leave this body, we leave the residue. Glory be to God. How did I get this? I don't know. The residue of the fact. Go in any house where anybody ever lived, and you will see the clothes don't touch nothing. That joker will fall to the ground every
The house,
time.
you mean?
The house would drop.
Yeah, if there's no one in it.
Nobody in it. This is the reflex muscles that are causing this house to stand there for many years with the presence of God in the wood and the nails. It's in, I saw it on YouTube, Detroit, at the slummed area. Nobody's there. The people couldn't keep their houses. They couldn't keep up the rent. The houses died and turned to piles of trash.
Mm-hmm.
Now listen, please. Before I would go out on the floor to VIA, together along with what I found out, how to, when to, what to do, I didn't realize that I was taught how to deliberately do something to make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that works in what the brick and mortar say, what you sow, you reap. That's a law. I found the laws in the operation of the spirit, but I looked at it from the standpoint of the law of doing practice. But I remember back that just between each break of manifestation, I would go through in my feeling and mind doing self, I would go through a grief. And watch when you talk about a burden.
I was about to say that.
A burden.
Like you went through a period of time where a burden was built into you.
And it is the same definition in the 8th chapter of Romans. Creature made subject to vanity unwillingly.
Yes.
Don't just think for 1 minute that deer and that bear out there in the woods is not going through something. Even the animals that can run the 20, 30 miles an hour, they are running that fast because that's the only thing they can do out of the reflex muscles to survive. It was made to die. And so in order, I heard Catherine Kuhlman said, who worked miracles for 1,000. She said at Carnegie Hall, there's some steps there. And she said at that step, she said, I reached for a doorknob. And in that doorknob, Catherine Kuhlman died 1,000 times. Now you're not going to die.
And she would stay in the back of behind the stage
Please.
until she knew Catherine died.
She would plead with God that Catherine would be moved completely out of the way. Now,
Okay.
the people caught on in the audience, thousands of them, ORU and Pittsburgh every year. They caught on, thousands of them. They caught on to who I found out who Catherine Kuhlman really was. I looked at her on the stage. She would be standing there, and the power of God would hit and come on the persons in a row. They'd be lined up, and every last one of them would fall. She didn't do anything but just stand back and said the glory of God and just do
Sometimes
nothing.
she just worshiped. And they would just pass out.
Now,
I'm glad you used Catherine Kuhlman because going back to the preaching part, she never was allowed.
They never
Very quiet, very subtle.
Yeah.
God would just move the presence.
And in fact, she was the very opposite of what we have done in the past with our services. She did not allow any loud noises. When you were there, if anybody started to scream or get loud, she would have her ushers go to them and tell them to be quiet. So the miracles and the healings and the things that took place in her services happened as a result of stillness.
Exactly. Yes.
Now,
the rest. Yes.
She was the focal point the whole time she lived because the people went to that particular place where she was and where Moses was and asked Moses by their presence, show me God. When you begin to wake up from the sleeping state of the comatose of the 10 Commandments, you'll see God, but you'll tell God in that way, die me. Die me. The me that thinks that it, all right, the me that is now operating out of two sides must merge. The flood of Noah could not take place until the water, the Spirit of God, come over the earth. Now, here's a miracle about the flood. Watch this now. In archaeology research, they found out that during the time of the flood was not over the whole earth.
That's right.
It was just over that area.
It didn't take place over the whole earth.
It was over that area where they could not see God, and they were the ones that was left outside of the ark. They were the ones that were still functioning out of the ego, and ego was minimized down to a minute second, and the only thing that existed through that flood was Noah, his son Shem, Ham, and don't give a damn coming through.
Oh my goodness, God have mercy.
Look,
Shem,
Ham, and Japheth.
We got two. Well, I'm gonna call it a meme. We got two memes, the two of us. When he gets happy, he does like Esther on Sanford and Son. He goes, "Oh glory, oh glory." But then when we're stressed out, it's "Oh Lordy,
Oh Lordy,
oh Lordy."
That is funny. That is funny.
She did a lot of "Oh Lordies" the other day.
Oh glory to
oh Lordy, oh Lordy.
That is funny. Yeah. But Dad also, because he made reference several times to the 10 Commandments. Again, we seem to forget the 10 Commandments was not something that God desired to give mankind.
Right.
That's right.
It was a request from mankind. They wanted laws, they wanted guidelines, they wanted that, and that was never the intentions of God, even to have kings and stuff. That was not God's. I see you. And stuff. That was again based off of the desires of man. So God gave them what they wanted.
He wanted to say, "Oh Lord," this morning.
Oh glory.
Oh Lord.
That is
Because
funny.
he didn't sleep a wink last
I
night.
tell him, give me one night. Him and
Ah,
Mr. Richard, give me one night, and I'm gonna put them on stage, and they're gonna leave.
oh Lord have mercy. Look, he didn't sleep a bit last night
Oh wow!
because he was hurting and he couldn't get comfortable in the bed. So he's been doing a lot of old lordies.
Now, I watched the signs of travailing and how we feel like we the old saying, we started, fought it, fumbled, and failed, thought we had it, but we let it get away.
Hmm.
We killed a rock and wrecked a train and dare a piece of iron to get rheumatism. We stayed and we wrestled with it and we fussed and we cussed and we did everything, and God didn't do nothing.
Listen, one of the things that Dad and I have come to, and we say this, we talk about it all the time, is it feels like we've gone full circle from the time we met. Two people who, as classified from the church standpoint, would say the unsaved. From the time we met up to now, it's like we've gone full circle right back to those two people that we were then.
Okay.
And realizing that the whole journey that we've been on was to bring us back to the place of knowing who those two people were.
Wow!
Okay.
So y'all went through a period and a process of being programmed and now being deprogrammed.
Yeah, and it's even more than it's coming to a place where you realize none of the programs matter.
My mom was,
Yeah.
my mom was in the my mom was in the doctor's office and they was cutting on corns on her.
And she had some bad corns and so
On that side of my family, people that had flat feet. I mean, it was so flat you couldn't slide a penny up under the.
now,
the
Mom,
feet.
you have to realize, Mom is now a saved Christian. Okay,
Yeah.
she used to be a partier and an alcoholic, but now she's a saved Christian.
So she's in
the doctor's office,
and he's working on her.
and he went
And
really,
he
really
went
deep on one of those
in that
corns.
corn. She said, "Ow! I need a drink."
So, no matter which journey she had been on, she went all the way back full circle to that person that was there before she ever said, "I accept Christ." I mean, you go right back full circle, and you realize the journey has been me learning things, unlearning things, and now I'm realizing that everybody's gone through this same stupid journey, and they're going to come to this same point where they realize who they really were before all of that happened.
I used to tell Mama when I go in the house, I say, "Mama," I said, "you ought to be ashamed of yourself."
No, you done got silly. I think he's sleepy silly now.
I said, "Mama, you ought to be ashamed of yourself." She said, "What is it?" I said, "I found something under the bed." She said, "No, you didn't." I said, "Yes, I did." I said, "Now I know why you slept in the bed last night instead of sleeping in that recliner in the front room." She said, "Why?" I said, "I saw a man up under your bed crawling around."
Speaking of recliners, he's now realizing that he's got a whole lot of his mama's traits.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
The conditioned self.
And never really lived with his mama.
Never.
But got a lot of her traits.
Never.
And so you can look at your family and resent them, but you'll end up resenting yourself.
My
So
mama
that goes beyond just DNA. It goes beyond learning behaviors, because that's the case. If you have a lot of traits of like you said, your mom, it is obviously that in our process, energy from those people that we're connected in switch overs on to us no matter what. So it's beyond DNA, it's beyond conditioning, learning. It's the essence that comes with you as well.
My mama lived almost 100 years old and ate every kind of hamburger you can call in the country and never had no trouble with cholesterol or anything. If she did, she would scrape the cholesterol off the top of the meat and eat that too.
Yeah, but But science calls that epigenetics.
Yeah.
Epigenetics is like we talked about this before. We had the honeydew and we had the cantaloupe, and we had them both sitting beside one another, and the coloring of the cantaloupe began to go into the honeydew. It was amazing. It was so we have that happening to us. But to go back to what I was saying is, we're coming now. I can't say everybody's at this point where the two of us are, but we're at this point now. We're realizing, okay, we've been on this spiritual journey. We've been seeking, seeking. And now it's not anything else to seek.
Okay.
Ma, you said a whole lot just now.
It's nothing else to seek.
Because I find myself a lot of times when I'm by myself, even in the night when I'm not sleeping, I'm saying, God, what more? I'm literally, what's more? I mean, it's funny because a gentleman, he likes to mess with me at the gym all the time. He'll come up to me. He's a minister, and my son was working out with me yesterday, and so he would come and he was like, I got a question to ask you. What's the significance of Jesus doing X, Y, and Z and so forth? And I give the answer, and they're like, okay. He come back again. He did it like 6 or 7 times yesterday. And my son is laughing because you're like, do he realize, Dad, that's all you knew was about me from the age of 15 till I'm like, look, he said, man, I'm trying to trip you up, but I just cannot trip you up. I said, man, you gotta understand, this all I know from the age of 15. But anyway, when that's all you've been studying almost your whole entire life. That's all I knew. Went to college, tried to study something else, still end up in that Bible, studying. And now I am. I'm glad you said that, Ma. I'm at the point right now where I'm saying, what else?
Nothing else to seek.
I did this. These miracles that happen. And inwardly, it's something much more than all of that activity. Going back to that place of rest again.
Yeah.
It has to be a place that is much more than what we've actually been projecting.
It's a place.
Okay, listen to this. You know what actually redeem means? We are redeemers.
Yeah.
We looked at something and deemed it. Now, we didn't, someone think we damned it, but we deemed it.
True.
In other words, we deemed to say, this is the way it's going to be. Now, watch this.
We place the value on it.
Place the demon on it. Yes. The demon. Now, here we go again. Everything that we're talking about now, I almost went in the first person. I could feel it when it slipped in. You that I speak to, the fullness of God was manifested when Jesus asked the question to himself in Peter, even though he told Peter that Peter wasn't the one that said it, it was the Father. Jesus was talking to himself inside of people. He deemed them to be the Father without them knowing it. But see, here's the burden. You know where God is. You know what he's made out of. You know everything about him in this humanity. And you know that this is the focal point of all of this. Take everything that you want to in metal, steel, and put it into a smoldering pot. When long years ago, when the plumbers would sealed sewer lines in a house, they got felt like wild hair, and they wrap it, and they have a pot heated. It's a name for that melting pot,
smoldering pot.
And they put different kinds of metal in there, lead and iron, and melt it down. Then take this poker iron and stick it in there at hot temperature and spread it around the joint and put the pipes together. That smoldering pot is the earth and our bodies. You are no longer in a position you done went too far and you can't turn around. And every time you turn around, like Lot's wife, everything is done turned to stone. And finally, there will be nothing left but God. Now, watch this. What is God? This is grown folks talk. God is a killer. I heard A. Allen preach this. He kills one and he raises another one up. A guy said to me in the office, said, I'm going to take you, Sawyer, and said, I'm going to show you the Father and all that. He said, I'm going to take you. He's called the love doctor, preacher, And he was going to take me in his hands and show me how to do it. I said, don't you play with me. I done heard preachers say this over and over again in my office. I'll do this to you and do that, and be just as cold, dead as a tater. Just cold with no butter, sour cream, and just a cold tater. I told him, I said, look, I said, don't you play me. I said, this stuff that I'm talking about, it'll kill you.
Yeah, you're gonna explain.
Okay, I'll explain to you. Hold on, give me time. Look, I said, don't play. I said, this stuff you're talking about, I'll kill it. I told him, I made him mad. I said, I'll kill it and raise it up. He said something he said was out of a smart way. I said, I'll take what you just said and kill that too and raise it up. What I was really telling him, he was lying. When I told him that, I ain't seen that Joe Bill since Moses. And you know what? I didn't expect him to, because I did not design that moment for me to see him again. Watch out. You getting ready to see the manifestation or the non-doing self revealed to you out of a false humility of, I had to do with this. God did it. I wouldn't do nothing but just sitting there, and God just did. That's the best thing that ever happened to an ego. I saw a guy walking up town. Hold on for a second.
Tell him about when you say God is a killer. You need to go into that.
Okay, hold you.
I know you're gonna tell another story. You're gonna forget.
I'm bringing it all up to that point. Y'all see how she act with me. I'm going to have to tighten up on her. Anyway, everything that happened to you or happened to God in the smoldering part, even in the womb before conception of this body, these bodies were made out of the smoldering part of a mixture of many lifetimes of evolution. And it was put into the skillet, into the pot, and boiled. Most of you sitting there boiling now, and you can't figure out, where am I headed? Let it alone. Let it be a smoldering pot. It's going to die, and everything. And you know what they do in the smoldering pot with iron and different metals in it? They skim it. There's dirt, lead, dirt stuff that will not work in the metal. You have to skim it over the top and wipe it off and throw it away. And then use the remaining. Each time you stick that iron in there to seal that pipe, you're going to have to clean the top of it off. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Here it is. I went out in the back and I looked at the clothesline, metaphorically speaking. And I looked on the clothesline, and our neighbor done hung her clothes out there. When she hung her clothes out there, on each pair of underwear, it said, on one time, it said, changing. January, February, March, April, May, June, and July. Come out there another time, she done woke up, she found out on each one of those pair of underwear, she done woke up. And when she woke up, she said, now I understand what the whole thing was about. I'm going to have to change my underwear Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So she didn't change. She was sorted out and changing just on the months. Now we're waking up to the smoldering part. It's not going to be easy to skim that stuff off the top because you've been conditioned. But God said he's using the conditioned self to seal the joints. You can't get around, and watch this, you're not going to get around seeing God in everything.
That's right.
You're going to see him in everything.
And this is what I've come to understand. We look at Jesus, those of us who are Christians, we idolize Jesus as a person. But Jesus had his own conditionings. And I mentioned it before, he was classified as a bastard because his mama didn't have a husband and she was pregnant before when she married Joseph. That was already in process. So he was doing that to protect her. And so they knew that they thought that Jesus was not born of a virgin, which he may not have been. I don't know. But she was classified. And so he had to carry that stigma. So when he said things in the scriptures, like when they said, your mom and your brothers out there, he said, who is my mom?
Mama. That's right. That's right.
That's not coming from a place of I love this woman. That's coming from a place of conditionings. And Jesus had a bunch of them. And when the other lady came to him, who was the Syrophoenician, I think, and she said, I want you to do something for me. And he said, I only come here for my people. I didn't come here for you. That's coming from conditioning. That's not coming from a place of love. But
he called them dogs.
He called them dogs, exactly. So he had the same humanity. And this is what I'm coming to, is that we've tried so hard to not be human.
Okay, watch this. At the marriage of Cana, when they run out of wine,
Dad, don't do that. I preach that, son. Don't do that.
They run out of wine. You've been drunk enough. Hey, and she went to Mama went to G and said, "Man, son, look here, son. That wait a minute now. They need some more wine. They don't run out." G said, "Are you my mama? You just stay out of my business." That's what he was saying in so many words. He said, "Mama, stay out of this. You may think that I'm your son and you can make a request of me like I am separated from you, but I am not. I'm not who you think I was."
So Jesus had hang-ups. And
he did.
He had hang-ups. And so that's why we look at him as this is why we can't look at Jesus and idolize the person. We must look at the Christ that animated that body.
Okay.
And he said it several times himself concerning them not idolizing him. Again, he kept saying over and over again, I am only able to do what I'm doing because of my Father. And he is the one to be glorified. So why are you holding me up to such a high standard or whatever? I and the Father are one. He was talking about a place of awakening and trying to get us to get to that place as well. We are not to idolize no one.
Exactly.
No one.
Exactly. So we now just have come full circle, and our time is up, you guys. But we've come full circle to the fact that we've got to accept and embrace our humanity, every aspect of it, even the parts that we think is not pretty. We've got to embrace every nook and cranny.
Here's the difference between a teacher and a preacher.
Miss Linda, you're gonna make it short.
Yeah, make it short. A teacher operates in what is called meditation, imagery, and delivery. A teacher that is a real teacher has the ability to go into something and lift it up and get down into the meat. But the way he comes out of this situation, he comes out with a constitutional working. Paul was saying, they say that let every man have his wife and every wife her husband. And then he said, I speak this by permission. What he was saying is, the grace of God has fixed me where I don't have to go through these things, but I can tell you what a good marriage could be. It could be when things are going good, a bad one when things are going bad. But you have to understand that a teacher is the ability to go into the creek as a little boy and go crawfish hunting. And he finds out that in order to get the best ones, he had to turn over the biggest stone, because under the biggest stone is the biggest crawfish. He has the ability, that's just what I told you. When I make toys, I go into it. I get into it. I saturate myself with it. I am that. that I make.
Mm-hmm.
A teacher is the ability to pull that function out into a visual, absolutely seeing. The seeing part of you is that part that God identifies Himself with as everything in the vision.
Mm-hmm.
The vision is, if I say, in your hand you have a lemon. Your subconscious begin to work in that lemon. Now you are now tasting it. Well, you were doing it when I said lemon because the glands in the back of your mouth went to working through your imagination an image of what that lemon tastes like because you already had the programming in you before you bought the doggone thing and before you came to earth. You already had the programming of who you were before you got here in the image.
And I know we've got to stop, but
Yeah.
you just mentioned, brought up how we actually see in the spirit.
Yeah.
And the screen that we use for that is the screen that we have our memories on.
Exactly.
That's how we see, because in order for you to envision a lemon, you had to have already have seen a lemon.
Yeah, that's renewing
and
prescription.
had an experience of a lemon.
That's right.
And so it's in the memory screen that it comes. And then not only is it the vision of that lemon, but the smell, the texture, the taste, all of that's involved in it too. So even with the imagination, until we can use the imagination fully, there is no creation that we can perform, because it has to go beyond you seeing it. It has to go all the way. You have to see it, feel it, taste it, smell it. It has to have all of those things incorporated into that imagining thing in order for it to actually come into manifestation.
We all are devoted to a God.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, hey, you don't have to smell that. You don't have to taste.
Anyway, I'm going to say what Linda said, and we're going to take off here. Linda says it all boils down to love and do what you want. St. Augustine, that's full circle to her. That's good. That's good. Thank you, Linda. And we're going to take off here. It's been a great conversation today. Pastor Norman, it was wonderful talking with you again.
Same here, guys. Yes.
Yeah, and we will be back on Sunday at 10. Pastor Norman, you're going to be doing a live stream this Sunday?
Yeah, at 11. I still do my 11 o'clock broadcast. Dealing with the Sunday after 2 o'clock afternoon service. I may off and on live stream, but because of the nature of what I'm teaching, there's some things that I cannot allow on
the live stream. I understand.
Yeah, because I went into some deep stuff this past Sunday.
All right. Well, hey, we'll see you guys next time. Dad, where you already gone? Huh? He's already gone. He's already gone.
He already go.
No, it's okay. We're gonna take off.
I want to talk to Pastor Norman.
Okay, but we're gonna still in the broadcast.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. Bye, you guys. We love you.
Love you all. Have a great day.
See you next time.